Well, greetings out there in YouTube land, and welcome to today's big video. I know it's been quite a while since I've uttered those fateful words, and I apologize for the long delay. We've been real busy working on other hobbies and projects, but now it's time to get back to our all-time favorite, tube amplifiers. And I have something very, very special in this box that I'm going to share with you, and we're going to do some work on it, hopefully improve it, and then test it. So if that sounds interesting, I'm going to start opening the box right now, so stay tuned. While exhuming the contents of this beautifully packed box, I came upon a couple real surprises. First, here is a pound of Starbucks coffee for yours truly, and probably 5 pounds of the best possible cat treats for Jack and Mitzi. Okay, so I can't tell you how much they appreciate this and how much I appreciate this. So thanks so much to the owner of this jewel, and I guarantee you we're going to do an extra special job for you. The next discovery is this nicely labeled package containing an original, this is going to be a Fender reverb tank, foot switch, and cable. The next box is equally well labeled and contains all of the, what I understand are the original tubes that came with the amp. Okay, so this will be a real treat to open this up and drool over each one. And here's what we've all been waiting to see. What would appear to be a absolutely brand new Fender chassis. Look at that rear plate, the lettering, the shininess of all the jacks, switches, no discoloration at all on the surface. Okay, so what are you thinking? This is like, what, 10 years old maybe, and kept in great shape? But let's take a look here at the transformers. First off, the power transformer, which is in absolutely perfect shape, other than an unsightly dent right here. And I don't know, maybe I'm going to be able to fix that for him. We'll see. But it's a Schematic 1963 25th week. Here is the filter choke, Schematic 1963 29th week. Output transformer, Schematic 1963 50th week. And finally, the little reverb driver transformer, which is Schematic and the 26th week of 1963. So, complete set of 1963 transformers. So, depending on what we see on the serial number and a couple other things, this may either be a 1963, extremely rare. They only made like a couple hundred of them. Deluxe Reverb, or an early 1964. Look at these tube sockets. I was looking at this one. The plastic hasn't even been cleared out from that center hole. It's like it was just cast. Oh, that's incredible. Well, it's a Deluxe Reverb. Okay, Fender Electric Instrument Company, so we know it's pre-CBS. Look at the absolutely new condition of all of the knobs, of the faceplate. Also notice the absence of 1 and 2 over the input jacks. That's going to be fairly important in a few minutes. We'll discuss that. Okay, remember, no channel 1 or channel 2. Go look at your Deluxe Reverb. I bet it has numbers above those input jacks. Look at this thing. I've been doing this a while. I've never seen anything like it. This is would be, I think, very useful to anyone trying to restore a deluxe reverb to see exactly how it came from the factory. The condition of the resistors, capacitors. You know, this reminds me of those cars that are bought and put in an inflated plastic bag, and then they take all the air, they evacuate all the air out of the bag, and the car then is opened up 60, 70 years later, and it's absolutely showroom new. Well, I think that's what we're looking at here, except I don't think it was ever in a plastic bag. Look at the wiring. I'm going to have to talk with the owner to see what he wants done with this, because you know, this is one of those things that almost needs to be preserved for history. So perfect. Okay, I'm going to check the serial number, and we're going to do a little research on this and try to figure out exactly when it was made. A whole lot of us feel like deluxe reverbs are just about as fine an amp as Fender ever made. And the blackface, of course, are preferred, but this is possibly the earliest blackface Fender Deluxe Reverb that I've ever laid eyes on. We'll have to do, like I said, a little more research on that, but let's get the serial number and then we can try to check this out. Just to build some suspense on the serial number, let's go down the rear panel and look at the brightness and flawless condition of all of these components. I mean, I've seen amps that were 2 or 3 years old that didn't look this perfect. The metal, everything about it is just flawless. Ooh, there it is. Okay, read it and weep, gang. A00567, which I think means this is probably the 567th Deluxe Reverb that Fender ever made. Okay, so let's go in the house and take a look at the Fender dating site and see if we can figure out a year and maybe a month for the construction of this absolutely incredible, this time capsule amplifier. Okay, here we have the data on the Deluxe Reverb. A00100 to 300 was 1963. Okay, so they only made, what, 200 of them in 1963. And then right in the beginning of 1964, remember ours is 567. So they started with the 300, so it was the 267th Deluxe Reverb made in 1964, right at the beginning of the run. You can also see that they went on to make a total of 24,000 blackface Deluxe Reverbs, with ours being here number 267 out of 24,000. So this is right in the opening days of Deluxe Reverb production. Now, since the owner just sent the chassis and reverb tank and tubes to me, I wanted to get some photos for you of what the cabinet, grill cloth, and everything else looks like. And he graciously sent them. Look at this. Now notice on these very early ones, there's no Fender logo on the grill cloth. Okay, so you can see it's just as flawless as the chassis. There's a bunch of pictures. I'll go over all of them with you. Here's additional photos, the right-hand side, then the wider view of the control panel and grill cloth. There's the top. You know, the metal always gets corroded. Look at those. Perfect. The rear view. We have information on the speaker. I'll share that with you in just a few minutes. Beautiful. Some close-ups of the rear of the cabinet. There's that magic serial number. Look at those screw heads. Probably never been out. Here's the tube chart. It's glued inside the cabinet. AA 763 circuit, and I think you could be absolutely positive that it is. But like I said, we'll double check. Production 1, I'm not sure what that refers to. Rubber stamped N, A, N being 1964, A being January. So this is the very first month of 1964. Which goes along very well with everything else that we've seen. Also, it has a GZ34 rectifier, which is always a good thing to see. Here's the letter from the owner. He has not turned on the amp or even tested it. The dealer I purchased it from, good Lord, I think we all need to find out who that is. If he has any more of these beauties laying around. Tested it at low volume for several minutes. Came from an estate sale. Good grief. He doesn't want to keep it as a museum piece. He wants to play it and wants it serviced. Okay, that gives us kind of our marching orders here of exactly what he wants. It's his amp, and he has every right in the world to do with it as he wishes, and if he wants to use it, God bless him. I think that's a great idea, but he wants it tested and kind of brought up to safe specs so that it could give reliable service. Wants to keep as much of the original circuit intact. Okay, perfect. Replace the AC power cord with a 3-wire cord. Disconnect death cap. Convert ground switch to negative feedback loop switch. Electrolytic cathode bypass caps. F&T or Sprague Atom. I much prefer F&T. I'm really down on Sprague Atom stuff. Okay, reverb tank and foot switch. Great. Okay, apparently the reverb tank's been tested. Test power and preamp tubes. Probably original the amp in probably a very few hours. Can you imagine? This amp's been used probably about 30 seconds of its lifetime. It's been plugged in and used, so the tubes are probably like brand new. Okay, here's a second. Here's page 2 of the letter. What we saw on the computer screen from the internet Fender dating site. 200 deluxe reverbs made in '63, and ours is the number 267th one made in '64. And here it repeats that. Interesting features, no channel numbers on the faceplate. I drew that to your attention. No 1 or 2 over the input jacks. No Fender nameplate on the grill, as we saw in the photographs of the complete cabinet and grill cloth. Now this is kind of interesting, and I never knew this. Mislabeled 1 amp fuse designation on the back plate. And for those of us who know and love Leo for his fiscal conservatism, apparently he had the back plates made up with the wrong fuse value. It's supposed to be 2 amps, so he went ahead and used a few of them, and then he got some 2 amp stickers printed up to cover over the 1 amp mistake. If any of you have a Deluxe Reverb or any other amp from this period that has that sticker over the 1 amp designation, let us know, okay? Or you can post a picture, but let us know. I'd love to see that. Okay, he's saying that the circuit is the AA763, which I surely agree with because it's the very first run of these amps, and that would be the very first circuit. Okay, NA, which is 1964 in January. We've already gone over the transformers to see that they're all correct. The speaker, however, we have not discussed, and it is marked 1963, the 45th week. Now it's a number 465 speaker, and that would be an Oxford, okay, which is correct for this amplifier. Some people love Oxford speakers, a whole bunch of people don't, but it's the correct speaker. And the owner might choose to install a different speaker and maybe keep this one in a box and in real good shape. I'll talk with him about that. But meanwhile, it does have the Oxford speaker with the proper date code. Well, I've removed the 4 pristine Phillips head screws that hold down the doghouse cover. Let's lift it off and see what awaits us beneath. And much as expected, we've got a set of original electrolytic capacitors. I spun one of them around. As we see, they are the original Mallory's. 16 microfarads at 450 as the schematic would designate, and we see here they're from the 44th week of 1963, which pretty well assures you that they are originals and incorporated into the amplifier circuit probably around January of 1964. So I've discussed again with the owner what his plans are, and he really does want to use this amp and play his guitar through it, as is his right, and let's face it, who wouldn't want to do that? So I want to keep the repairs and modifications to an absolute minimum, and I think it's wise to replace these original electrolytics. They are hidden underneath the doghouse cover. I'm going to use F&Ts, and I'm going to use 500 volt 22 microfarad electrolytics in the place of these, which I think will give better filtration and last for a good long time, with a little extra resistance against crossover between the plates, because these are 450s and we'll be putting in 500s. So let's get started replacing these jewels, and also double checking the internodal resistors, which certainly do not appear to have ever been overheated. These look like they just came out of a pack of brand new carbon comp resistors, but just the same, we'll test them and see if they've they always seem to vary upwards, you know, out of spec. They never seem to decrease in resistance, but we'll double check and see, and I'll share that information with you. So time to get started. The owner of the amp told me that he also has the original owner's manual that came with it. So I asked for some photos, and lo and behold, here's the manual, and it came in this absolutely snow white, perfect envelope. And look at the picture here. I mean, isn't this the way we all grew up? Dad in his suit strumming away while Mom sang into the recording studio style microphone, while we lay on the floor in our pajamas listening to Hound Dog Taylor records, surrounded by world-class vintage Fender amps and guitars. Down here it could be a picture of the amp we're working on. It's a 63 or 64 Deluxe Reverb, probably a 63 for it to be in a photograph that's in an amp that was made and sold in 64. Okay, so there it is. I mean, that's like a photo from my childhood. I'm sure it is from yours too. And as if it just couldn't get any better, it also has the original Victoria amp cover that came with it when it was brand new. And as you can see, the cover probably protected it over all those years, but it doesn't look like it needed much protection. Look at the condition of the, 61-year-old vinyl cover. Incredible. Here's the tag on that Victoria vinyl cover that has protected the amp for the past 61 years. And here is a close-up and detailed photo of that original Oxford speaker with the jack that it plugged into the rear of the chassis. As you can see, the condition is unsurprisingly flawless. Probably never been out of the cabinet. But here's a close-up of the speaker identification numbers. We see the 465, which means Oxford, 1963, 45th week, and 12-inch speaker. I guess model K5. I'm not sure what the -6 stands for. I'm going to assume this is an 8-ohm speaker. But anyway, that's it, and it looks just as good as we would expect. Now, before we start replacing these old electrolytics, let's do a little schematic review here and see how the diagrammic presentation of the circuit compares to the physical presentation. Okay, we see that there are 5 identical electrolytic caps rated at 16 microfarads at 450 volts. All 5 of these are identical and they match the schematic. We see that there are 2 10K internodal resistors, and we see that they're located right here. So then this must be the first actual filter cap after the reservoir capacitors. Here would be the second, and then we go through the second internodal resistor to the third. So this then would be the third electrolytic cap. That means that these 2 right here form the reservoir capacitance. Now, Fender on these early amps put them in parallel. Now, when you have parallel resistors, the capacitance adds, so this then will be 32 microfarads, but the working voltage remains the same. So those of you who are familiar then with the other way that Fender does the reservoir caps is he puts them in series, and we'll talk about that in a second. You'll find then that one of these will be reversed head to tail to the other so they could do the series circuit. But since these are in parallel, they're beside each other and truly parallel, okay, exactly as this schematic indicates. Now let's talk a little bit about parallel and series reservoir capacitors. Here is exactly what we have here in this amp. 2 16 microfarad at 450 volt caps. We have our B plus come in, and it can reach ground only if it goes through the 2 parallel electrolytics. This results in reservoir capacitance of 32 microfarads at 450 volts. Now later, and on the larger circuits, Fender resorts to a series capacitance wiring here for the reservoir caps, and in series we get a completely different result. If we put 2 70 microfarad at 350 volt caps in series, the capacitance of either one, and they should be equal, is halved. So we have 35 microfarads net capacitance, but the working voltage adds. Okay, so 350 plus 350 is 700 volts. Now you can imagine in the larger circuits for twins and basement and things like that, this would be more beneficial because that inrush voltage on those circuits could easily exceed 450 or 500 volts. So for safety's sake, the reservoir caps are put in series, and they can offer 700 volts of internal short resistance, whereas on this kind of smaller, more simple circuit, Fender used the parallel reservoir caps for 32 microfarads, and which is about the same, but it's at a little over half the working voltage. Now let's talk about the wiring of the B plus or power rail circuit rather than just the components. We see a wire coming here from the GZ34 rectifier carrying the high voltage B plus. It still has a ripple in it, okay, from rectification, and that's what our filter caps are going to remove. We see one wire coming over here to the two capacitors in parallel, and here we have that wire coming up to our reservoir caps, and underneath there will be a connection between this one and this one. We'll see that these two go into a wire that is beneath the board, which is a ground. Okay, so actually the physical representation pretty well matches the schematic representation in this case. And a side note is that we notice that the standby switch is after the reservoir capacitors. This is the best way to have it. That means that when you turn the amp on, the rectifier and B plus inrush voltage will charge the reservoir caps and then wait for the closing of the standby switch to finish charging the remaining three electrolytics. If the standby switch were down here before our reservoir caps, then when we flip the standby switch, we'd have to energize and charge up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 electrolytics, which may actually be more than what our rectifier can handle and might cause some grief. So placing the standby switch after kind of cuts down on that initial inrush by charging these two first, waiting, and then charging these three after the standby switch is thrown. One last component to be discussed then would be the filter choke, which is TR2. We look down here, TR2 is labeled as a 125 C3A, and here it is right beside the power transformer, 125 C3A. Okay, so I think that is pretty well, it demonstrates all of the physical components related to the schematic drawing, okay, and we've actually talked about the wiring then that connects them. Now it's time to remove those old Mallory electrolytics, and one little tip I'll give you is that it's usually easy to remove the positive end from the eyelet board, but the negative ends usually go through the eyelet and run to other eyelets. So on your negatives, you probably won't be able to pull them out of the eyelet board. Sometimes you can, it doesn't hurt to try, but generally we have to snip the wires down here as close as we can to the eyelets on the negative end, whereas the positive ends I'm going to heat each of these little solder areas and lift out the positive lead. And pretty well as predicted, the positive ends pulled out on the three electrolytic filter caps, whereas the reservoir caps they're using the lead from the cap to go underneath the board to make that parallel connection. So these ends will not pull out. Okay, so I'm going to snip these here as close as I can to the solder joint, and then we'll come back here and I will try to remove the negative ends, but I don't think I'll be very successful. And exactly as predicted, none of the 5 negative ends would pull out of the eyelet board. And probably what they're doing is they're tucking this lead through, bringing it over to this eyelet, tucking this one in, bringing it over to this eyelet, down so that when the ground wire, which is that black, I don't know if you can see it right there at the tip of my fingernail, the ground wire then has continuity to all of the negative ends of the electrolytics. Okay, so I'm going to end up snipping a total of 7 leads. Okay, here's the board all cleared off. I try to snip just as close as I can so you don't see a stub sticking out. Okay, that's kind of low class. Naturally, this board is brand new. Sometimes they're discolored, might be a little oily, which is bad because that once this gets contaminated, this cardboard, it can conduct. So in this case, though, this thing is just amazingly clean. So I'm going to pack up these 5 caps, and I will send them back when I return the amplifier to the owner so that all the original parts go with it. Now, with the electrolytics removed, we can test those internodal resistors. It's supposed to be 10,000 ohms, and it's pretty close, 10.8 thousand ohms. Okay, that's, I would say, acceptable. Let's check the second resistor. Now let's check the second internodal resistor, which we see is right here, and it's supposed to be 10K, instead it's 11K. So it's 10% high. Now the silver band indicates that the value when new was plus or minus 10%. So it's actually within specs, and I don't have the exact replacement of this that's closer to 10K, so I'm going to leave it. Also, we can check our voltages to make sure that that 10% variance does not affect the voltages of the tubes that are downstream. And when you think about it, with the higher AC voltages that we're seeing in our home wall sockets, maybe the upward drift of carbon comp resistors is sort of a self-defense mechanism. And here are our 5 new F&T filter caps, all wired in place. I really like to have them properly aligned. All of the leads are parallel. They're at the same height. Now granted, this doesn't really make the amp work any better, but it sure makes your work look better. Okay, so be careful when people pull that lid off and take a look inside the doghouse. They're going to say, well, he cared. You know, and really, if you don't care, then you really shouldn't be doing this. I did one final check, and that is to connect my ohm meter to ground with one lead, and then go down each of the negative leads of the electrolytics to be sure that they are properly grounded, that nothing under the board has been disrupted, which would disconnect any of them from ground. They all passed, so it's time for the doghouse cover to go back in place. Okay, the doghouse is back in place, and now it's time to flip the chassis over and resume working underneath. Okay, our focus now is going to be replacing the old zip wire power cord and rewiring the polarity switch so that it is a on-off switch for the NFB circuit. I'm going to try to use all the original wire if possible to make it look like nothing's been changed. Also, we will disconnect the death cap, which is lurking down here in the recesses of the chassis waiting to strike. I'll just disconnect it, and bend the lead out of the way where it can never make contact. Okay, so let's get started removing all of these wires to the polarity switch and to the auxiliary power socket, which really serves as a terminal strip for connection between the power cord and the circuit. Alright, all wires have been removed from the polarity switch and from that auxiliary socket that's used as a terminal strip to connect the AC power cord to the circuit. Now it's time to start rewiring with a new 3-wire power cord and making the polarity switch become a way to turn the NFB loop on and off. The original power cord now has been removed. It's wrapped up with the original grommet and will be returned with the amp to the owner. Here we have the new 3-wire power cord, and to sort of prevent the bright green and bright white wires from jarring the eye when people look into the nice pastel colored wiring, I'm going to cover each of them with a piece of shrink wrap. Now, since once I strip the ends, the color codes will no longer be visible, I put a little piece of white tape on the white wire just so I don't get them mixed up. The 3-wire power cord is completely wired in place. The green ground wire is soldered to the chassis. The black hot wire comes over here to the gold screw on the auxiliary socket and then continues on to the power switch and fuse. And the white wire comes over here to the silver screw and then continues into the primary of the power transformer. Now it's time to wire that switchable NFB. Looking at our schematic, we see that the external speaker hot lead connects to a wire that goes through an 820 ohm resistor and then comes down here to the long tail pair. Okay, that is the negative feedback. We're going to use the polarity switch to make this switchable so that when you switch it closed, you will have a negative feedback loop. When you open it, you will not. So let's see if we can find in the circuit where those wires are. And I look down here at the external speaker jack and I follow the wire along over here to between these two blue molded caps, and we see that it goes into an eyelet here, and there is the 820 ohm negative feedback resistor. So what I'm going to do is disconnect the wire as it connects up here to the external speaker switch. I'm going to run it over to the polarity switch one side, and then on the other side of the polarity switch I will come over and connect to the lug that wire was originally connected to, which means that this switch then will open and close the NFB loop. The NFB loop is now wired with the switch. I took the wire that ran from here to here, which is the external speaker jack, and I ran it over to the single lead on the polarity switch, and then I ran a wire from the lower lug on that same polarity switch back over here to the lead on the external speaker jack that this wire right here used to go to. Okay, so now when you flip the switch, you will either have an NFB loop or not. Okay, and I also used the original wire to do this so that it's essentially undetectable. Well, it looks like it's time to evaluate all of the tubes that came with the amp. using the mighty Hickok 600A tube tester. Both triodes of all 6 of the 12A series tubes checked out okay, except that this one was supposed to be a Magnavox 7025, and as you can see it's a 12A T7 instead. So I dug through the stash and found a nice NOS RCA 7025 that I'm going to install in place of this incorrect tube. Okay, and of course it tested out just perfectly. All tubes were also checked for shorts, and none had any. The 2 RCA gray plate 6V6s tested out with excellent emission and no shorts. So now it's time for the mighty GZ34 AmpereX rectifier tube. What a gem this is. And as our final tube, that GZ34 AmpereX tests out beautifully. Both diodes and no shorts. So now we have a really fine set of vintage tubes to install in our Deluxe Reverb chassis, and we can proceed with our testing of the circuit. There you have it, about as nice an array of vintage tubes as you could ask for, and now it's time to continue our testing of the circuit. I've got the Deluxe Reverb inverted and mounted quite happily in the Mojo Tone chassis stand. I've connected the 8-ohm shop speaker. I've got to unpack the beautiful original foot switch, and I'm in the process of unpacking the reverb tank, and I just wanted to share this with you. Just like the chassis, it's just shiny as the day it was made. And it's not Accutronics, it's a Gibbs tank, which is appropriate on these earlier models. So I'm going to get it set up underneath the chassis, and we'll have to get some cables to connect it. I think we're ready to switch the circuit on for the first time. Let's do the checklist. We've got the foot switch plugged in. We've got the reverb tank plugged in. We've got our Eurotubes 6V6 probes in series beneath each of the output tubes. We've got our audio signal generator at around 200 cycles per second, which is not all that unpleasant on the ears. The amp is plugged into the current limiter, and as I said, the 8-ohm shop speaker is connected, and Mitzi's here to kind of check up on us. So I think we're ready to energize the circuit and see what happens. Okay, I switched the amp on. It's still in the standby mode, so we're energizing those 2 reservoir caps. See that the pilot light is working and that no current is flowing through the output tubes, which is exactly what you'd expect with the standby switch off. Let's let it warm up for a minute or two, and then we'll take it off of standby and see what happens. While waiting for the tubes to heat up, I made sure that all of the knobs are in their lowest position. Okay, I think we've waited long enough. Let's take the amp off of standby and watch the 6V6s warm up. That was pretty quick. Looks like the plate voltage is right on the money. According to the schematic here, it's supposed to be 415 volts, and it's right at 410. Okay, and plate current. Remember now, these tubes are in fixed bias, which means the cathodes are grounded, so the maximum plate dissipation that they can tolerate is around 70% of the maximum, which is 12 for these vintage tubes. 70% of 12 is 8.4 watts. Right here it looks like I have about 8.8 watts. So this tube is biased right on the money. This one is a little cool. Okay, and there is some disparity between them. It's not all that great. We'll let it run for a little while to see if that disparity decreases or increases. And meanwhile, let's go down the line and see if we have any volume. I'm plugged in now to the vibrato channel. Oh yeah. Okay, I'm set at 3. Now the treble control is probably not going to have much effect because remember I have a 200 cycle tone, which is down in the bass range. Well, a little bit of increase, and it's a nice quiet pot. It's not noisy and crackly. Now we'll go with bass. We're going to see, or hear I should say, a pretty stout increase as I go up. Wow, a lot. It appears then that the bass control is working great. Since we're in the vibrato channel, let's go ahead and crank the tremolo up to an intensity and speed of 5. I don't hear any tremolo effect at all. Let's come down here to the foot switch, vibrato. Maybe it's wired, the jacks are in wrong. We'll go with both. Nope, I get no response at all, and I look in to the end of the little burrito there, the opto isolator, which is right there, and I don't see any light flickering at all. Now that can mean several things. Number one, it could be that the opto isolator has failed. We know the tubes are good, but a third possibility is, what if the foot switch is not making good contact? Because the vibrato on this type of opto isolator tremolo requires ground to work. And if the foot switch is not providing that ground, say the switch has failed, then we won't get our tremolo. Let's turn down the volume, and I'm going to pull the foot switch and plug in a jumper right here and see if we can get that tremolo to work. Okay, I've installed a jumper. Let's turn up our volume. Oh yeah. I think you hear the tremolo. Well, let's go up a little faster. Crazy fast now. Nice and slow at 1. I don't think there's any reason to slow this tremolo down. And intensity works perfectly. Both knobs are nice and quiet. So by this simple test, I've proven that the vibrato, and we know that's mislabeled, it's really a tremolo switch, has failed. Let's see if the reverb switch works, or if the reverb itself works. Let's turn off our tremolo. Cut down on that volume. Let's turn the reverb up to like 6 and bounce a tank. Wow. Okay, we know then that the output circuit of the tremolo is working okay. Okay, all that bouncing the tank proves is that the output is functioning. As far as the input, we don't know, and I'm going to have to hook up a guitar to this to tell. But it sounds like the reverb is working. Now let's see if the reverb switch is working. We know it was on then. Let's turn it off. Woo! Okay. I'm thinking the reverb switch itself is bad. So I'm going to have to change both of these switches, but that won't stop us from proceeding to do our testing on this amp, because reverb does not require ground. So this is not necessary, and I do have my jumper in place for the tremolo. So like I said, we can continue our tests and move on over here to the normal channel. Okay, I'm over here then on the normal channel, plugged in. Let's see about our volume. It's, I'm going to say, about the same level at 3 as the vibrato channel volume. And our treble, it increases the volume a little bit. Okay, but it's quiet and it seems to be functional now. The bass, exactly like the vibrato channel bass. Tone controls are quiet. They seem fully functional. We've got balanced volume between the two channels, and it looks to me like everything's checking out pretty well. But I look here at our plate dissipation on our output tubes. This one's gone up, this one's gone down. I don't think those tubes are balanced real well. Now, it's going to be hard. In my stash, I may have some red printed gray plate RCA 6v6s, which is what we want to replace this. We want these output tubes to look exactly alike because we're really concerned with the cosmetics on this really fine old pristine amp. So I think I'm going to have to experiment. Let me see if I have any acceptable tubes and try substituting to where we can get a little bit better balance, okay, on our output tubes. Well, as luck would have it, I did find a red print gray plate 6v6 RCA tube, which is physically identical to the ones that came with the amp. So since this is the weak one over here, I'm going to substitute this tube in for this one and see if its plate current can be a little higher, which will bring this one down a little bit and maybe give us a halfway decent balance. The new tube has been installed here on the left side. Let's take it off standby and see if we get a little bit better match. Huh. It kind of turned the tables, didn't it? It's flowing a little more current than the right one, which was the hot one before. That's a lot closer though. Remember, we were what, 5 milliamps apart, and now we're what, around 2 or 3. That looks pretty close. I might have lucked out and found just the right tube for this. I'm going to let it go for a while. We'll let them warm up and then we'll see if they get closer or further apart. Well, about 10 minutes has passed and looks to me like they're within about, what, 2.6 milliamps, which is pretty darn close. Now this one's a little too hot. Over here, what do we have? We've got 8.4, which is perfect. This one, though, is going to be about 9.6, which is a little hot. So what I'm going to do is use the bias adjustment pot here to crank the left one down so it's a little bit high. Then this one will be just a little bit low, but between the two we'll have a nice kind of a moderate plate dissipation value. Okay, here we go. Let's see. What do I want to get down to? About, let's get the right one at 20. Left one at about 21.8. Okay, so now we're at 8.4 and 8.0, and that looks good to me. Let's leave the bias there for now. One note to promote safety, and that is, after turning on any amplifier circuit, before you start working on it, make sure that it's unplugged and then use a capacitor discharge tool to go in and touch each of the places where the B plus can be found in the circuit and drain those electrolytic filter caps. Otherwise, even though the amp is turned off, there could still be 450 volts lurking in here waiting to ruin your day. So make a tool. I've shown in videos how to do that. All it is you can take a Phillips screwdriver and connect from the shaft of the screwdriver through about say 100 or 1,000 ohm resistor to ground, and that will fairly gently discharge any or eliminate any charge that might be remaining in those pesky old electrolytic filter caps. Otherwise, it could really cause you some grief. So be super careful. Next, I'm going to measure the plate voltage on each of the triodes in all of the preamp and phase inverter tubes. We already know what it is in the 6v6, and we know that it's almost identical to what the schematic suggests. And it must be emphasized that whenever taking any voltage readings from the circuit or doing the final biasing of the output tubes, you have to make sure that you're not plugged in to the current limiter, but are plugged in to the wall AC supply. The current limiter will reduce both the current and voltage being supplied to the chassis, and will therefore give you false, slightly reduced readings. The amount of reduction of the voltage and current is directly related to actually the size and power demands of the circuit. With a champ, you'll hardly see any difference between current limiter and AC supply. But with a twin or one of the larger Fender amps that draws a lot of current, you will see a big discrepancy. I'm thinking the discrepancy with the Deluxe Reverb will probably be moderate, but still, for accuracy, make sure that when you're taking those readings, you're plugged into the wall AC supply and not your current limiter. And here are the results, and as you can see, they're consistently about 5 or 6% over what the schematic says they should be, which goes right along with the current, no pun intended, higher wall AC voltages that we're finding. If back in the old days they were around 110, now they're probably up around 120, which is close to a 10% increase. So these seem completely legit to me, right on the money. Next, I'll go through and test all the resistance of all of the plate resistors and other resistors in the circuit to make sure none have drifted too far out of spec. Okay, we know that with carbon comp resistors, they always go high. Most of them come to you brand new higher than what they say. But I just want to check to make sure that there's none of them that are way off. But if they were, I think these values would be way off also for wherever that resistor was. So I honestly think it's a shot in the dark, but I'm going to go ahead and check just to be sure. Now, surprisingly, all of the resistors checked out within about 10% over the stated value, which is perfectly normal for carbon comp resistors, and when they fail, the value is going to change dramatically. Now, you can't test all of them in circuit because in some cases, as in the case of this 2.2 meg ohm resistor, they're in parallel with other resistors. So if you get a low value, you can pull one end out of the circuit and then double check, and almost invariably you'll find that they are correct, and it was simply the parallel wiring that brought the value down. Now, one final step I think that is essential on all of these old amps is to check the coupling caps. Now, blue molded caps in Fenders are world famous. They're fantastic capacitors. And I don't know in how many years I've been doing this, and it's very rare to find any of them that cost. Now, to do that, you will remove one of the leads of the coupling cap from the circuit, and you have to be very careful which lead you pull. You are running from the output plate of the 12AT7 phase inverter, and you're going to the grid of the 6v6 output tubes. So you'll pull the end that's going to the grid. In this case, looking at the schematic, it's real obvious we want to pull this end that's going to the grid of the 6v6. Okay, in both cases, we do not want the end that is coming from the preceding plate. Of course, there'll be DC there. Okay, there'll be 170 volts of DC there. We want to see if any of the DC can leak through that coupling cap and get to the grid of the 6v6 and then alter its bias, which will screw everything up. Okay, so I've disconnected this end of the two coupling caps. I'll be using my DC voltmeter. The red probe will be connected to that loose end of the coupling cap that I removed from the circuit. The black probe will go to chassis ground. If I get any DC voltage readings here, that will indicate that the coupling cap is leaking DC to the grid of the output tubes, and therefore the coupling cap has failed. You may also ask what amount of DC leakage, if any, is permissible, and the answer is zero, none. There should be no DC leakage through the coupling cap. If there is any, then it's time to replace that coupling cap. Okay, I've got the positive lead of the DC voltmeter connected to the loose lug here from the first coupling cap. I'm set down here at DC volts, and the negative lead just goes to chassis ground. Now, one thing you need to see, and that is the meter's going to jump all around. Okay, those aren't real readings. Okay, that's just sort of background noise in the system. Well, get used to what you see here, because if when I turn the amp on that changes, then that means we might have measurable DC. So you've got to, at least with my DC voltmeter, you're going to get a little background noise. Okay, and it's jumping around. I bet yours does the same. Okay, now we're used to that. I'm going to switch the amp on. And let's see what we get. Okay, does that look familiar? There is no measurable DC voltage. We've got background noise. It's jumping all around, and it is simply of no concern. Let me change my positive probe to the other coupling cap. I'm on the second cap. What do we see? A bunch of background noise. Okay, so there is no DC leakage. You want to see what DC looks like if we had a reading? Give me a second. I'll hook up to something that will provide a good solid DC voltage reading. Here's what real DC looks like. You see, yes, it's moving around a little bit here in the hundreds position, but it's rock solid. This is our negative DC bias supply to the grids of our 6v6s. That's what you'll see, although it'll probably be lower. It'd be more like 2.96 volts of DC if you have a leaky coupling cap. But you see, that's nothing like what we were seeing before. Okay, so coupling caps pass the test, and I think we're in pretty good shape and probably ready To hook up some guitars to this, we'll get Mitzi and Jack out here and have them strum some tunes for us, and we'll test the tremolo and reverb and see how our amp sounds. And once again, just to reiterate, before I go in and reconnect the coupling caps, and be sure you do or you'll be very embarrassed when you try to test the amp, be sure you drain all the electrolytics so that you do not get blasted, okay? And believe me, 450 volts will ruin your day and your underwear probably. Okay, so be safe, discharge those filter caps. Before beginning the audio testing, I wanted to also mention that the owner of the amp requested one unobtrusive modification to the circuit, and that is to lift one end of this 47 picofarad volume control bypass cap from the circuit. What this does is it allows the treble frequencies to bypass the volume control and therefore enhance them, okay, only in the vibrato channel. And a lot of people don't think that's necessary. So the owner said to lift one end of this cap, insulate it, and remove it from the circuit so that the vibrato channel does not have enhanced treble compared to the normal channel. I was just getting ready for the audio testing, and we see down here that this cathode bypass cap has pretty well puked its guts. This is the 7025 cathode bypass, which is the first preamp stage for the vibrato channel, and we were hearing some shrillness in the vibrato channel. I'm going to replace this cap, and we're going to see if that helps. Okay, I've lifted the capacitor from the circuit. You can see that the fluid, probably the electrolyte of the capacitor, is actually leaked under it. I'm going to clean that, and then I'm going to tack in a pair of brand new cathode bypass caps. Now, I'm probably going to end up putting them in this case, but I will do that later. For now, for testing purposes, I want to see if that corrects the shrillness in the tone. Okay, I've cleaned up here on the circuit board, and as you can see, I've got the cap out. There's no doubt this thing was at beyond death's door. Okay, so let's tack in a couple brand new cathode bypass caps. It's time to replace the two Carling switches in the original Fender foot pedal. I bought identical Carling switches. They're still being made and they look just about the same. So this will be a real nice replacement, probably not real detectable. So let's remove the old ones and install the new ones. As you can see, the wiring of the switches is quite basic. We have the two shielded cables coming in, this one from the tremolo, this one from the reverb. The center hot wire goes to one lug of the Carling switch and the other lug goes to ground. Over here, same deal. The hot wire from the reverb circuit goes to one lug, the other lug goes to ground. And we know that the tremolo circuit in the opto-isolator type of tremolo requires ground to work. So this switch has to provide the ground for the tremolo to work. Removing ground stops the tremolo, but conversely with the reverb, the switch provides ground to silence the reverb and eliminates ground to allow the reverb to function. I'm trying out a brand new digital soldering iron. You can adjust the temperature with the plus and minus buttons. I have it set at 410 degrees Celsius, which will melt solder quite handily. And this is the on-off switch right here. Okay, it also, when you turn it on, it heats up about as fast as a soldering gun. So you don't have to leave this on for 9 hours. Say you're going to go drink your big gulp or something like that, you can turn it off, and when you come back, push the on button, and it'll be back up to full heat in a matter of like 15 or 20 seconds. Okay, so we're going to be using this magnificent new soldering iron to repair our foot switch. And to quell any unnecessary questions, I get it on eBay, and very inexpensive, around $15. Okay, so I'll keep using it, and I'll report to you if it fails early or misbehaves in any way. The new Carling switches are installed in the metal housing with the lugs splayed as they were originally, and I've used the original Fender washers and hex nuts instead of the round knurled nuts that were provided with the switches. Knurled nuts, what a name for a punk rock band, eh? Now let's wire it. I'm also trying out a new spool of solder that I just got on eBay. It's fancifully named American solder, which of course tells us it was made far from America. No doubt China. It's rosin core and 6040 tin lead. I really have no use for any type of silver solder. Might be environmentally better, but boy, it doesn't work well. Okay, so we'll see how this works. Well, here's the foot switch all wired up. I'm glad I splayed those lugs because otherwise the wires would never reach them. Okay, they did not leave even like a 32nd of an inch of spare wire in here. So all wired up, and the flux worked quite nicely. Okay, so we got a really good solid solder joint there, and now it's time to test the switch and see if it works. I've got my ohmmeter probes connected to the tip and shield of the red shielded cable, which should be reverb. Remember, red for reverb. Let's see if it works. Okay, I'll push down. Yeah, that's more like it. Now let's try the tremolo switch. Okay, here's our tremolo switch, mislabeled vibrato. Perfect. Okay, so we're back in business. One more step toward the completion of the mighty. All the old 25 at 50 microfarad electrolytics have been replaced with Sprague 25 at 50s, and all of the original capacitors have been included with the other parts that I've removed in a bag that will be returned to the owner. Now, some of you are probably wondering why I didn't restuff the old caps with the new ones, and the truth is, number one, I wasn't asked to do that, and number two, this circuit is not easy to view. It's going to be mounted inside the cabinet with the 4 screws, whereas on the tweed fenders, where the chassis is hanging vertically, all you have to do is remove the back door and you can see the circuit. So it was just decided that it was best to do it this way. And some may ask, if just one of the electrolytic cathode bypass caps was obviously failing, why replace them all? And I think you've already answered your question, because if one of them is so obviously failing, the others can't be far behind. Okay, these down here, and with the cost of shipping and all, nowadays it's better to be safe than sorry. So I think it just stands to reason to replace them all. And just to double check, let's do an ESR test on those old capacitors. I always test a brand new one to see what an appropriate reading is, and it's 0.30. So let's test a couple of the old ones and see how they compare. This one is showing 1.6, which is 5 times what the normal reading was. Let's try the other side of the capacitor. Once again, a little over 5 times normal. Here's the one that was leaking its electrolyte so badly. I can't even get a reliable reading on it. Let's try the other side. And it's 96. Okay, that's, what is that, going to be 300 times higher than normal? More, actually. So, no doubt that one's bad. And here's the third duplex cap, and it's 15 times normal. Okay, I'll check the other side, but I'm betting it's going to be the same. No, it's only 12 times normal. Okay, so they don't age evenly, but obviously that's not a usable electrolytic. And here's that smoothing cap from the negative DC bias supply, and it's 6 times normal. Okay, let's go back and double check our new cap and make sure that the settings have not changed. And as we see, it's still 0.3 as it was before. So there is no doubt that all of those 25 microfarad at 50 volt electrolytics that I replaced were faulty, and I was justified in replacing them. For those who are wondering how I tested the capacitors, I was measuring their ESR value, and I was using a meter that was purchased from Anatech Corporation. They're around $100, at least they were. But why don't you check in with them online if you want to buy one of these and see if they're still available and perhaps order one. And now with the circuit components all tested and replaced as needed, I think it's time to begin our long-awaited audio testing of the circuit. Okay, here's the setup for the long-awaited audio testing of the mighty 1964 Deluxe Reverb. I will tell you what all the settings are for each tune in the video, and I wanted to reveal the guitar that will be providing the input to this fabulous amp. It's a 1964 Gibson Les Paul Jr. And I think it's very suitable here, a 64 Les Paul into a 64 Fender amp. Okay, so buckle your seatbelts, gang. We're about to get started. Well, I guess that's about it for this very lengthy and detailed video documenting the repair and testing of a super nice 1964 blackface Fender Deluxe Reverb amp. Since this may well be the last amp repair video that we post, I wanted to make sure that we went out with a bang. I went into a lot of safety precautions and little details on the sub-circuits and things like that, and I hope that they were enjoyable and made sense. I want to take my usual time here to thank all our Patreon patrons and PayPal contributors who have kept us on the air for another month advertising free. Without their support, there would be no videos, so I think we really all owe them some appreciation. If you'd like to join them in supporting our channel, I will put links in the video description to enable you to do so. Meanwhile, I think we're going to get back to our Vibro Champ Reverb scratch build video series. Things are going well for us there, and we'll have a really nice part 2 video for you in the very near future, so please stay tuned. Until then, our best to you all. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.